Steve Scalise's denials are not believable. Welcome back to Democracy Now! Mark, why not? Why aren't they believable?
Well, thanks for having me, for starters. I mean, they are wildly unbelievable. First of all, when Steve Scalise was in his 20s and a state representative, that was the peak of David Duke's sort of heyday. Duke ran for Senate in 1990. He ran for governor in 1991. In both cases, he got the majority of the white vote in Louisiana, and was a huge international story. Moreover, Kenny Knight, the person you mentioned as inviting Scalise
for young people who don't know who David Duke is, can you talk about his history before he ran for public office?
Sure. Duke, early on, formed a major Klan group called the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. When he was still at LSU, at Louisiana State University, as a student, he paraded in one instance in a full neo-Nazi getup, carrying signs having to do with the Holocaust and so on. He later tried to shed his Klan past in the sense that he formed new organizations. One of them was called the National Association for the Advancement of White People. Later on, he created something called No Fear, which then changed its name to Euro. That was his latest iteration. During those contests, especially the 1991 run for governor, a huge amount of reporting was done about Duke's ties to various neo-Nazi groups and beliefs and so on, and it became very clear that it was simply false that he had put these beliefs behind him. While he was campaigning, he was still selling Holocaust denial materials from his bookstore and so on. So I think it is certainly fair to say that David Duke was then and remains today the best-known white supremacist in the United States.
Quote, those that attended the Euro conference in New Orleans will recall that Scalise was a speaker offering his support for issues that are of concern to us. Mark Potok, can you talk about Stormfront and what this Euro conference is, and of course the likelihood that Scalise didn't know what it was?
Well, Stormfront, first of all, is the largest white supremacist web forum in the world. It's run by a former Alabama Klan leader, a man named Don Black. It's a huge forum. It has, or it claims, to have something like 300,000 registered members, and not all of them Americans. It's really quite something. Euro, at the time, really was, in a sense, the most important white supremacist organization around, or it was certainly trying to be that. It had collected many of the better-known leaders of what they would call the white nationalist movement, with David Duke at the core as the sort of head. To go to the believability of Scalise's claims, it's, I think, important to say that Kenny Knight, the person who invited him, has been lying through this entire episode. We know that because, among other things, Kenny Knight made a later claim to the New Orleans Times-Picayune that what Scalise had attended was not Duke's meeting at all, was not the Euro meeting at all. He had attended a homeowners association meeting earlier that morning in the same space. He went on to say, Kenny Knight went on to say to the reporters that he, Scalise, and Kenny Knight then left. That is false. We know that because we have a picture, a photograph of Kenny Knight at the Euro conference giving the speech that was published, in fact, in the David Duke report. So there's been a lot of effort on the part of Kenny Knight and others to essentially muddy the trail. But as I said at the beginning, I think it's simply not believable that a politician like Steve Scalise at that time could possibly not have known what this meeting was. He knew Kenny Knight. David Duke has himself explained in the last few days that Scalise knew Knight as Duke's campaign manager. So he knew that he was going to a Duke event. We've had one of our own staff members, Heidi Byrick, attend later Euro meetings. These meetings are draped with all kinds of racist banners and flags and so on. So I think the whole tale is nothing but that, a fairy tale.
Former KKK leader David Duke says Scalise is being singled out. Speaking to Fusion, Duke said of the 2002 meeting, quote, he was just going there, obviously to tell voters about some of his initiatives on some tax matters. if Scalise is going to be crucified, if Republicans want to throw Steve Scalise to the woods, then a lot of them better be looking over their shoulders. Duke suggested he could release a list of names of politicians he is connected to. In a follow-up interview with CNN, Duke said he would name names from both main political parties.
Said this week that if he's crucified, I think that was your word choice, then you're going to name names. What are we talking about?
I would name names of any Democrat, and I know some Democrats and Republicans in the House of Representatives who tried, in fact, urged me to support them.
In other words, you're saying there are members of Congress today who have relationships with you.
Have had relationships.
But they choose to keep those private.
And that's fine.
And you honor that.
And I respect somebody's privacy.
But you'll call them out.
But I would call them out if they be hypocritical.
That was David Duke speaking to CNN. Mark Potok, what do you make of that, him claiming he has ties to politicians from both parties, Democrats and Republicans?
Well, I think he said, and said correctly, that he had ties to them. I think that's certainly not true now, or at least it's very unlikely. At the time, around the turn of the century, turn of the millennium, there was quite a lot of contact between politicians and various white supremacist groups. Another big group was the Council of Conservative Citizens, the group that Trent Lott, the former Senate Majority Leader, got into trouble over endorsing and speaking to and so on. So I think it's probably true that there were a number of politicians in Louisiana. Duke had a real constituency. He earned in various elections 600,000 votes, white votes, and in another 700,000 white votes. So there were certainly politicians who were interested, if not in David Duke personally, then his constituency. So, you know, we don't know what was in Steve Scalise's head in 2002 when he went to attend the Euro conference.
Mark.
We don't know whether he had similar views or was simply trolling for votes.